Hi, everybody. My name is Cathy Lucrezi. I'm a supervising attorney at Legal Aid Service of Collier County, and you're tuning in to the Lunch and Learn series sponsored by our firm. Today's topic is going to be about Social Security overpayments. If you're somebody that receives Social Security benefits every month, then this is a subject that you'll be interested in. Our session today is live on Facebook. It's also being recorded and will be available to everybody on YouTube. Just look for Legal Aid Service of Collier County. If you have questions as we go forward, feel free to email them to us and we will address them as we can. I appreciate the opportunity to have this chance, the opportunity to present this material to you. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see a PowerPoint presentation on this subject. Social Security overpayments can be very scary. If you are someone who gets Social Security disability or SSI, supplemental security income, retirement, any check that comes from the federal government, it can be a very scary thing if you receive a notice that says, hey, we paid you too much. And this hopefully will show what you can do if and when that happens. So, what is an overpayment? An overpayment is when you get too much money. They send you more than what you are supposed to get. The overpayment is the difference between what you should have received and what they actually sent you. So it's just like if you went to a fast food place and you ordered the $2 hamburger, but they gave you $9 and change from your $10 bill. They gave you too much. They want the dollar back, and that is an overpayment. When Social Security does it, it gets to be a lot more expensive than a fast food restaurant. Let's go through an example of what an overpayment is. Let's say that you get Social Security disability benefits of $876 every month. And in May of 2019, Social Security sent you, deposited into your bank account, $876. Then sometime later, they discover they made a mistake. They did their math wrong, or they used wrong information. Whatever it was, they figure out, hey, we paid her too much in May of 2019. We should have only paid her $812. Now, the difference between the $876 that you got and the $812 that you should have received is $64. And in this example, that $64 is the overpayment. Even if this mistake has nothing to do with you, you did not do anything wrong, the mistake is totally Social Security, they want their money back. Just like if you were at the fast food restaurant and they gave you too much change, the cashier would say, give me that extra dollar back, I paid you too much. Social Security wants that overpayment paid back to them. Now, the example I gave is not too realistic, because often in an overpayment situation, it's more than just 1 month. And it might be something that goes back as far as 2015. So it can be a substantial amount of money. I've seen people receive notices of overpayment for amounts in excess of $40,000 because Social Security says, hey, there was a mistake made back in May of 2016. And when you add up all the benefits that Social Security has paid you in mistake, it can add up to quite a bit. So I don't know about you, but if I got a bill for $40,000, I think I'd be a little bit worried. So what causes this overpayment? Often in situations involving SSI, it's because your income has increased. And this like I said, mostly in SSI cases, this is the situation. The income has increased, and so that affects how much you're entitled to receive in SSI each month. It can also affect Title II disability, because if your income is significant enough, it may demonstrate that you're not really disabled. Social Security has some guidelines that it uses to say, if you're earning this much income each month, you're not really disabled. You're working for a living wage. So that can be a reason that something becomes an overpayment. The other things that can happen that causes an overpayment is if your living situation changes. If you are a single person, let's say, living alone, you're paying rent, all that sort of thing, you know, Social Security will pay you the full benefit. But if you move in with your son and suddenly you don't have to pay rent anymore, Social Security counts that as a kind of, you know, income that you're getting, even if it's not cash. And so your amount of monthly benefit will decrease. If you are single or married and your marital status changes, you become single, you become married, that can affect it. If you get assets, if you win the lottery and you put that money in the bank, Social Security is going to say, hey, you're no longer eligible for us. Or they might just, and like I said, they might just say, you're no longer disabled, and so you're not entitled to these benefits. Any one of those things can be the cause of an overpayment. And that's why Social Security always tells you, be sure to report any changes in income. Report when your living situation changes. Report when there's some significant change in your situation. And if you do that, if you do a report, you call in and say, hey, just wanted you to know that I got a part-time job at the library. I work, 5 hours a week. I make $100 a week. You want to be able to tell them that. And here's a good tip to remember. If you call in and give that information, write it down. Keep a record that you reported it on May 18th or 19th, is it today? May 19th, 2021. I called Social Security and told them I was working at the library for 5 hours a week. You want to do that every time and keep a record of it. If you are good with the computer, you can report those changes in income online. Go to ssa.gov. And you can report income changes and any kind of other changes that way too. But always, always keep a record of when you report the information, because what often happens in these cases is when Social Security discovers they've paid too much, they often will say, well, it's because you didn't tell us that your income increased. You didn't tell us that you got a job. You didn't tell us that you got divorced and now you're living on your own, whatever it is. And if you have a record of you reporting the change to them, you're going to be much further ahead in the game than if you didn't. It's not good enough to say, oh yeah, back in 2018, I called and told them. I told them that I was now living with my son. And, I don't know who I talked to. I don't know when, but it was sometime in 2018. I called, that's not good evidence. It's much better if you at least have a record, some note that you made that shows that you called and reported the change. And the significance of that is that, like I say, they can go back pretty far in calculating how much of an overpayment you might owe. And so if they're going to say, we paid you too much since 2016, you want to be able to show what dates you made contact with them. Social Security is pretty good about keeping records of when somebody has contacted them, but they're not perfect. And you need to protect yourself in these situations. So what does Social Security do if there's an overpayment? they'll send you a notice and it says, hey, we overpaid you. Oops, sorry, made a mistake. And you owe us $42,000. Send it to us within 30 days of this notice. I'm sure everybody can do that without a problem. So if you can do it, then terrific. But if not, then keep reading that notice, because the notice will explain what will happen if you don't pay within the 30 days. The notice will tell you that you have the right to appeal the decision about the overpayment, and it will tell you how you can ask Social Security, excuse me, to waive the overpayment. And we'll get into more details there. There's a difference between an appeal and a waiver. So if you get a notice that says you owe this money, read it completely or have someone read it to you. It's important. There are important deadlines in that notice, and it affects your ability to fight the overpayment. If Social Security doesn't receive the money from you within the 30 days, and you haven't filed an appeal or asked for a waiver, then Social Security will take the next steps to collect the overpayment. If you get SSDI, or sometimes it's called Title II, or just Social Security Disability, if you are on that program and you have an overpayment, Social Security can hold back your entire check until the overpayment is paid off. And you can imagine how terrible that would be if you owed something like $42,000. That would be a long time that you would go without your monthly benefit check. You have the alternative of saying to Social Security, I can't afford to have you take my whole check. How about if you take just $50 a month out of my check to go towards the overpayment? And it's like anything else. You negotiate a payment plan, and then Social Security takes it out of that Title II check, the SSDI. Now, SSI is different, Supplemental Security Income. This is the program where you might be eligible because you're disabled or blind, and you are also in a low income category. If you have an overpayment and you regularly get SSI, then Social Security can withhold only 10% of your benefit each month. So let's say that you get a monthly benefit of $890. That means that Social Security can withhold only $89 out of your monthly check. And the check you would get from Social Security would be your regular monthly amount less that 10%. And I keep saying that you'll get a check, but you know what I mean. You get it deposited into your account. Now, you also have the option here of working out a payment plan to pay something greater than the 10%. And if you can do that, more power to you. That's great. I'm sure they'd be happy. But just know that if you get SSI and you have an overpayment, you will still get your monthly check, but it will be less than what you otherwise would get. Okay. Another way that Social Security can collect the overpayment is they can seize your federal income tax return, or refund rather. So if when you file taxes, you're going to get a $1,200 refund, Social Security can snatch that up and apply it to the amount of the overpayment. They can also withhold the overpayment from future benefits that Social Security might pay out. So let's say that in the SSI situation where they can't take more than 10%, they keep that $89 each month, and then suddenly you're no longer disabled for whatever good reason that you're able to work, and so you go off SSI entirely. Well, the overpayment's still there. You haven't chipped away at it very much. But let's say in a few years, you have to get back on SSI because you're disabled again. At that point, SSI can pick up the ball where it dropped it and start withholding the benefits. In other words, that overpayment is going to follow you until it's paid off. So this is what you do if you disagree with the overpayment decision. You get the letter that says, hey, we made a mistake. You owe $42,000 in an overpayment. Now, you can ask for a reconsideration within 60 days of that notice. So if you get the notice on January 1, you have to file your request for a reconsideration within 60 days after that, which I think is March the 2nd. 60 days is the absolute deadline. But if you're currently getting benefits and you ask for the reconsideration within 10 days of the date of the notice, your benefits will continue until Social Security makes a decision on the reconsideration. In other words, let's say that you get the notice and it's dated January 1. You have 60 days to appeal, or to ask for a reconsideration, which is a type of an appeal. 60 days to do that, which is until March the 2nd. But if you ask for the reconsideration before January 10th, there will be no interruption in your checks until Social Security considers what you have to say or why you disagree with the overpayment. Now, that could be great if you are correct in asking for the reconsideration. It means basically like, hey, this wasn't my mistake, or you've made a mistake in calculating this overpayment, and so you shouldn't have it at all. Then Social Security will just keep your checks going and everything should be fine. But if later Social Security decides, we're right, you're wrong, then that amount of overpayment has just gotten bigger, because in my example of, you've appealed before January the 10th, but it takes Social Security a year to figure out who's right and who's wrong. Well, that's 12 more months of overpayment if you lose. So it's a calculated decision that you make right at the beginning. Now, I have said this in context of reconsideration, and I'm using the word reconsideration and appeal a little bit interchangeably in this presentation, because the rules are pretty much exactly the same, but they're really two different stages. Usually the stages, you get the notice of the overpayment, you can ask for the reconsideration. If you're not successful with the reconsideration, they'll tell you, and they'll say you have the right to appeal to the administrative law judge. The deadlines are the same for both levels, reconsideration and appeal. Oop. Gotta go backwards. I don't know how to go backwards. Here we go. If you appeal the overpayment decision, this is how you do it. And actually, the notice that you get will tell you this in writing. The appeal has to be in writing. You have to say why you weren't overpaid, or you have to explain why the overpayment amount is too much. Sure, they say that you owe them $42,000, but you think, well, maybe I owe them $3,000, but not $42,000. You have to explain why you come up with that. And you have to be prepared to show Social Security proof of your income and expenses. And this is where it really helps if you've kept a log or a written record of when you called into Social Security to report changes in your income or living situation. This is where it really, really helps you, okay? But there's another option to an appeal. You can ask for a waiver. And a waiver is asking Social Security to forgive the debt altogether. All right, so basically the appeal says, hey, Social Security, you got it wrong. The waiver says, oh, maybe you did make a mistake and you paid me too much, but I can't pay it back. So two different things, okay? For the appeal, remember, you had to do that within 60 days of getting the notice of the overpayment. Ask for a waiver, you can do it anytime. There is no deadline. You can do it years after you get the first notice of the overpayment. There's no deadline. The request for the waiver has to be in writing, and you have to show that the overpayment was not your fault. And you have to show that it would be a financial hardship if you had to pay it back to Social Security. Now, Social Security has a form that you use to ask for a waiver, and it's very detailed. They want to know how much income you get into the house right now, including food stamps and anything else, gifts from regular contributions from family members, that sort of thing. And they want to know what you spend every month. What do you spend for electric and for insurance and rent? They want to know all those things. They'll also ask you for copies of bank statements and copies of bills. It is pretty tedious to fill out the form, but Social Security will help you if you have difficulty. And it's really important to be thorough. It is a long form and it's tempting to just kind of skip over parts of it, but you want to give them all the information you possibly can so that they can consider your request for a waiver. The form that you would use is something that you can get from Social Security. You can also get it online at that website, ssa.gov. What's important to know too is that you can do both things at the same time. You can appeal the overpayment and ask for a waiver at the same time. Social Security does not consider that to be inconsistent. And it can be very smart because appealing the overpayment can be very, very difficult because, like I say, they go back many years and how much was made, what did you report, when did you report it, all that sort. It gets into a lot of problems of proof. The waiver is a little bit easier because it's like taking a snapshot of what is happening to you right now in terms of your finances. And so you can do both at the same time. If you have missed the deadline to appeal the overpayment, you definitely should still go ahead and ask for a waiver. Because remember, the waiver has no deadline requirement. Social Security handles millions of claims of people throughout the United States. It's a great bureaucracy. There's lots of jokes out there about Social Security and red tape and all that sort of stuff, but you got to put it in the context of the millions of claims and funds that they process every month. And nobody wants to pay an overpayment back. If you can work something out to make it clear that you shouldn't have to pay, you want to give them all the ammunition that you have, so it makes their job a little bit easier to consider what you're asking them to do. Now, one of the things I've not touched upon, but which is important to note, is that through all of this presentation, I've been assuming that the overpayment was through no fault of your own. If instead you tried to commit a fraud against Social Security, you knew that you were supposed to report the income, but you never did, then that's a whole different story. Then if Social Security believes that you have actively defrauded them of the money, then not only will they be able to collect the overpayment, but they have the option of seeking some criminal sanctions against you as well. In other words, it is against the law to commit fraud against Social Security. So if you are getting SSI and you're working on the side, not reporting the income, just know that you might be going down a dangerous path. And if you're in that situation and you want to kind of get off of that dangerous path, then be upfront and talk with Social Security about reporting past income. That can be a really bitter pill to swallow, and you should get some legal advice before you take that step. Okay, but all of the presentation that I've given today focuses on when the overpayment is not your fault. I hope this has been helpful. I appreciate you attending this with us. You can always call Legal Aid Service of Collier County for problems involving this and many other civil legal issues. We have offices in Naples and in Immokalee. We do a lot of intakes by virtual meetings and over the phone. Do not hesitate to contact us. The information is on this screen, and remember that you can, if you're not able to jot it down right now, you can always look at this on the web at YouTube. You can also just Google Legal Aid Collier County and you'll find us. Thank you so much for attending today, and we look forward to doing future sessions with you on issues involving Social Security, as well as many other issues in immigration, housing, consumer, family, domestic violence, all of that. Please be sure to check back with us and participate. Thank you so much. I hope you never have an overpayment. Good luck. Thank you.